I'm really excited to be joined today by Lisa Vo. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into all things assistants and transaction coordinators. Lisa, thanks so much for joining today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Definitely love the admin virtual assistant TC world, so definitely happy to talk on that topic today.
Yeah, so let's dive right into that. I'm curious if you can first kind of point out the differences between assistants and transaction coordinators. A lot of times people might mix the two together. They might think one person can do both. So can you kind of do the breakdown between the difference between the two?
Yeah, definitely. There is a downloadable that we can post for this as well. It comes from Cultivate Wins. David Breckheimer is a really good TC coach in the industry, so definitely look that up. But basically, the main difference, a real estate assistant, when you hire them, it can be just somebody who does general items for the team. Things like, maybe setting up yard signs, putting on a lot box on a house, things like that, right? Just think of general items that you need to just push forward that transaction, right? They are going to be very systems based. So they're going to be administrative help. They're going to be a support team for the agents, things like that. Just off of, awesome like general office management things like ordering coffee. Like, do we have enough, open house signs for this weekend? Things like that. Answering the phones whenever new leads comes in. They could also be your database manager, right? Like, do we have duplicates in the system? How many reporting, pending transactions do we have? They can also coordinate your, appreciation events. Like, let's say you have a client appreciation event every year. They will handle the event management of that. Other things that you can think of is like basically marketing, right? How do we get that listing into Zillow and make it shine, right? Maybe rewording it and refreshing it every 30 days if it's not picking up attraction. Listing management things, right? So again, those yard signs, lock boxes, flyers, that brochures that go in front of the house, right? Those are things that they'll do. They could also be your local runner, right? So actually putting in that yard sign or coordinating that. So that's a different that a real estate assistant will help you with. They could be licensed and they also could be unlicensed. So just look at your various states, which we also have a resource link with the National Association of Realtors. They can tell you what an unlicensed assistant can do in every single state. So definitely check that while you're looking for a real estate assistant. A transaction coordinator is going to be a little bit different, right? They are specializing in one thing. That is handling your transactions, or if you're using Follow Boss, we call them deals, right? So they are going to be very specific in your systems. They're going to create you a very manageable, scalable system. You can duplicate that, bring in any real estate assistant, virtual assistant, right? Other transaction coordinators, in-house agents that want to take over the system. That can be duplicated, that can be predictable, effective, and it can also just be a task list that happens over and over again so that no step of the transaction gets missed, right? They can also manage everything from contract to close. So you typically have a listing coordinator and you typically have a transaction coordinator. Most real estate assistants will fall in the realm of a listing coordinator because they're working so closely with an agent. They're going through everything like, when are we going live, right? Maybe we're pushing back photos and things like that. A transaction coordinator is not going to technically do all of that. They're basically taking everything from the moment the contract is signed all the way through closing. And they could possibly even add on additional services like marketing, like what happens after post-closing? What if I want to send an anniversary gift every year? What if I want to send a 12-month email campaign to let them know maintenance tips and how to keep up with your home after you close, right? Those are things that a transaction coordinator could possibly do as an add-on. Right? They're going to manage your deadlines, your due dates. So things like, if you have 50 deadlines, right? I think we have 43 in Colorado. So you'll be able to do things like, when is the inspection up, right? Is their appraisal due date? When is our earnest money due? They're going to keep track of those things and make sure that file pushes all the way through to the closing. They're going to manage all your communication. So anything from communicating to the title company, to the lender, if we have, a lawyer involved, the other side, if they have a transaction coordinator, they're going to keep everybody in the loop. So they're going to be the gatekeeper of all your communication, and also updates, right? Like, hey, we passed inspection. Hey, we've made it through appraisal. We're moving forward, and next step is we're looking for the clear to close. Those are different things, are updates that they're going to take care of on behalf of the agent and the client. Last thing, they're going to coordinate closings, right? They're going to put that on your calendar, make sure everyone has the right time and we can make it to closing. And they're going to upload everything to your compliance document, meaning whatever your broker is requiring of you to get that commission disbursement, or we call it disbursement authorization, they're going to do that. But the most important thing, they're going to make sure it goes to closing so you as an agent gets paid.
Awesome. So for anyone watching, if you weren't able to write fast enough to write down all those responsibilities down, don't worry. It'll be all below in the description with the various downloadables that Lisa mentioned. So a question for you, is it ever a good idea to have one person do both?
Wow. I say starting out, then yes, you got to get started somewhere, right? Your main goal for that is usually a real estate assistant is what their first hire is, just to delegate some of those general tasks, as well as add on that listing coordinator and transaction coordinator. As you grow and scale, I will tell you, if a really good transaction coordinator handles everything, even if they're a real estate assistant, their max threshold is going to be about maybe 15, 20 files active a month. And that depends on your system, that depends on their knowledge, it depends on how long they've been, different variables. So don't hold me to that. But about 20 is where you're going to grow and scale, and that you probably want to add in another transaction coordinator after that. So yes, you will want to add on additional people as you grow, and just look at your numbers and you'll be able to tell, right? Like, depending if you're in commercial or residential real estate, or if you're doing another niche market in real estate, maybe your transactions are more heavily invested, more tasks are involved, then maybe that 20 files really is just 10. Right. So depending on where you are with your transactions, what you're doing, what your niche is, you will know better how long it takes you. Sometimes I time myself, right? There's many different project management tools out there where it'll tell you, I started on this file, it takes me 100 hours to get through closing. So if I hire an assistant, I'm having them 40 hours a week, and they're doing this many tasks and handling this many files, you can calculate the math from there.
Okay. And another question for you. There's a big hot topic in the real estate world on virtual assistants, whether you're hiring them in the US or outsourcing to another country. Does an agent need both an in-house, in-person assistant and a virtual assistant, or how do they determine when they may need to hire both?
Yeah, so a couple of variables on that. One is probably budget, right? That's probably the number one driver, is what can you afford? So with a virtual assistant overseas, there are pros and cons to that. And I do also have another downloadable that you can do in-house versus outsourcing, right? So outsourcing, whether it's going to be somebody who's remote or somebody who's overseas, pros and cons to both of that as well. But the main thing is probably budget friendly. If we're doing someone outsourced in the Philippines is probably the most popular. So many different places you can outsource that. Onlinejobs.ph. You can look on LinkedIn. You can look on Indeed. Those are probably the most popular places. If you're familiar with Fiverr, you can also find a lot of them on there, or even your local like Facebook real estate groups. A lot of those VAs are going to be on there looking for work and things like that. The pros of that, again, is your budget, right? So basically, they're going to be anywhere from $4 to maybe $10. And then if you also have a recruiting company who's helping you find them, source them, that may be additional fees. So you're looking at like $10 to $20 an hour, right? So it's much cheaper to hire outsource than to have an in-house, but it's really hard to control the time difference, language barrier. It's really hard to find locality, right? Like knowledge in the local market. So they're not going to know that 5 miles from the listing, right? They're not in that farm. They're not in that area. They don't know that there is a big, King Super like that just opened down the street, and that's a big attraction, right? So it's, again, having a local person in-house sometimes has those different, pluses that you don't have with an outsource. Other thing is probably training, right? So you're going to have to train both of them depending on their skill level, right? You can really hire some good VAs overseas that may have years and tons of experience, and they just plug into your system. But some of them really need hand holding, and you may not have that ability. Again, maybe a time difference, also a language barrier. So you'll have to teach them real estate terms and things like that, right? Where I think if somebody who is knowledgeable just about real estate, if they've ever done a transaction, you can quickly probably take an in-house DC who's a good administrative assistant, has a really good disc profile, usually someone who's detailed oriented can plug right in and just quickly pick up on some systems, especially when you have proximity to the agent, right? If you have someone in-house, whether you're doing Zoom calls every day with them and they're recording everything that you're doing, mimicking what you're doing, or having someone in person physically in the office, again, modeling and just shadowing somebody, that just shaves off a lot of time for that training curve.
Yeah, so there's a couple of objections people might have if they're watching this and they don't have an assistant yet. One is it's very hard to let go as a business owner and entrepreneur, let go of responsibilities. And so at least I'll let you touch on that. But in the description, I just thought about putting a link to an article that Jennifer Height from Follow Boss just sent me yesterday, actually. It's called Letting Go of Legos. And don't discard it. Read it. It's very informative and lets you have a different perspective on if you are hesitant to hire an assistant, why you want to do it. It'll allows you to scale, let someone else take the lower dollar tasks that you need to do. And the goal is to always be evolving, where your title is always owner or real estate agent, but your job responsibilities are ever evolving. And that article kind of explains how to do that, where you're always changing what your job description is. But Lisa, do you want to add anything to that of like how to let go and when you think it's a good idea for someone to hire an assistant?
Yeah, I probably say I am probably the worst at that because I, always think I can do it better, right? And I've perfected it and I can do it quicker, right? So when I first hired my first VA, the hardest thing was sitting down and writing a list, right? Doesn't matter if it's a physical notepad or we can have digital, iPads and you put on your notebook, but write down a list of things that you're literally wearing the hats for, right? And then start highlighting maybe 3 to 5 things that you can delegate out, right? Like technically email management is one of those things. It does need require training, but you can have like best practices like, hey, if you see an email that comes from I don't know, like express.com, obviously that's spam mail, right? Hit unsubscribe and then hide it and delete it, right? So that could be just something very easily that you could clean up your email and just handle. And then as you give these tasks over to your virtual assistant or in-house person, doesn't matter who it is, you can start seeing how they would basically do that task, and you want them to do about 60% the way you would do it, right? They may not be as fast, but if they can get the job done, over time, they're going to be as efficient as you, and they're doing exactly the way you want to. So I think Andrew Altman from the last time we met in Club Mastermind in Arizona, he says basically he's on a Zoom call, he records his entire day, his whole screen shows exactly how he does things. He sends that over to his virtual assistant, and that person takes basically every single item, groups it into what task that is, and then splices up that video and then writes out the SOP so that the next time somebody comes in and has to handle that task and he delegates it, they have a step-by-step process. This is how Andrew thought through it. This is how he completed it. And I'm going to mimic that over time. And at some point, when they take over that task, they're going to have their own ideas later. This is another tool I can use to make this faster, right? So be open to that, letting go, but also develop it and to say, take ownership of it. If you feel there's a better way that I haven't been doing it, feel free to test it out. Let's do it together. Let's talk about dialogue every day about that process and then make that change for that process.
Yeah, that's great. And that was going to be my second question, which you already answered of how do I train an assistant? I don't even know where to start. And so starting with just recording your day via Zoom when you're at the computer is a great way. And then having either the virtual assistant or an in-house assistant watch it and transcribe either through like a Google Wiki or through Scribe How, the exact written down step-by-step instructions of the various things you do each day. I'm going to put you on the spot with this question. There's another, I guess, confusions people have, the difference between a VA and an ISA.
Oh, okay. So a VA is what we call a virtual assistant, and ISA is what we call an inside sales agent. So again, we had talked about in the beginning, what is the difference between a real estate assistant and a TC. ISA is going to be specific. They do one thing and they're solving that one pain point. So an inside sales agent, just like if you think about real estate agents, they are outside sales agents most of the time, and you're probably doing both roles right now. You don't realize it. So an outside sales agent will go open the door, right? And they'll do open houses, things like that. They're outside of the office. An inside sales agent is going to probably sit at the desk majority of the time, and they're going to be the one picking up the phones, right? So they're either cold calling, outsourcing, outbound calls, or they're taking incoming phone calls. They're setting appointments usually for the outside sales agent. So they're qualifying, they're that missing piece that when you get that lead in, they're qualifying it and only passing over live, warm, transferred leads or setting that appointment for that outside sales agent to close that deal to get them under contract. So that is a specific role for an inside sales agent. Now, can a virtual assistant be an ISA? Yes. Can a virtual assistant be a transaction coordinator? Of course. So a virtual assistant can do a lot of general tasks, or they can do specific tasks as well. So when you're hiring, usually most people hire a general virtual assistant, just like a real estate assistant that does everything, right? Because I may not need you to do, 40 hours of transaction coordinating work, right? Because I may not have that pipeline, but I can do 20 hours here, and then maybe 5 hours of marketing, maybe 5 hours of like ISA work today, right? So however you divvy up that timeline of the hours is what's going to be really important. Like, what is the priority? What is your pain point? Have your virtual assistant see if they can master that and hire for that specific role. We sometimes want the person to be a master of all trades, and it's really hard to do. I'm a big fan of The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's a great book, read it. And that's what I'm trying to do in my life, is focus on one thing, do it well, and treat your virtual assistants, real estate assistants, or transaction coordinators the same way.
Yeah, that's great insight. So, Lisa, people watching this probably like, wow, Lisa knows a lot about transaction coordinator. Is she a transaction coordinator herself? Can I just hire her? So I want to ask, can people hire you to do anything?
Sure. So I am an approved Follow Boss consultant. I do consult and talk to agents around, the U.S. and Canada about this all day long. I do own a transaction company, and I do have a few agents that I do TC work for. I am not taking on new clients right now, just because I'm focused on the one thing. So right now I am director of technology for a local team in Colorado. So that is my main focus, to really build up that team and their systems and basically grow them. But yeah, I am open to also like talking about, you're breaking down your systems, right? So I do save a space for that. I do have my consulting business that I talk about systems and tech tools, and I just love networking with people, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay me for my time or advice. I just love for people to get better, and just to be outstanding agents in the real estate spec. So if you want to reach out to me, definitely, I'm sure Elena will post my information after the video. But I am for hire, usually for coaching sessions, one-on-ones, intros, demos, just a quick peek under your hood. What can I do better, kind of thing. But as far as transaction coordinating, I have a lot of great friends in the industry. I'd be happy to refer you to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to do this. I know a lot of people will find value out of this call.
Thank you so much, Elena.